Today, we have a very special guest.
Our work basically revolves around patients with genetic diseases. We have two types of jobs that we do. We do prenatal diagnosis in the next pregnancy. We provide services to patients with different genetic diseases. About 12,000 genes, we still do not know what disease they will cause.
Can you tell more about the mission program?
This is a collaborative program of 16 different institutes.
You are the second person that discovered a gene. So, what exactly the story behind that discovery?
There was a mutation in one of the genes called as the BHLHA9. We have described 5 to 6 novel genes until now. We are happy that we are able to do this. That's really encouraging to us. Government is also very generously.
What exactly the statistics are?
So if you look at the statistics, in India we have almost 7 crore patients. This we call it as the National Genomics Core, established by Department of Biotechnology in 2 centers.
Today, on Genetic Education Podcast Raw and Real, we have a very special guest, a scientist who represent India at a global level, who discovered entirely a new gene, and he contributed in the field of pediatric and rare genetic disorders. He published more than hundreds of articles in world's reputed journals and is a key scientist who advancing genetic sciences in India. Today we have Dr. Ashwin Dalal sir, head of the Diagnostics Center for DNA Fingerprinting and Diagnostics, Government of India. It is an honor, sir, to have you here, and thank you so much for accepting our invitation for this podcast.
Thank you.
And sir, congratulations. I just show a post on LinkedIn that you are selected as a fellow for the National Academy of Sciences, India.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it is very difficult to cover Dr. Ashwin sir's entire research journey and scientific achievements because the list is so long. So I am giving you just a brief overview about Dr. Ashwin sir's work. Currently, he is working as a staff scientist and head of diagnostic at Center for DNA Fingerprinting and Diagnostics, Government of India. He is one of the senior most scientists working in the field of human medical genetics in India. He did his MBBS with gold medal from Goa Medical College, MD in Pediatrics from the same college, and DM from Sanjay Gandhi Postgraduate Institute of Medical Sciences, Lucknow. He published over 144 peer-reviewed articles in various national and international journals, wrote books and book chapters, and also is a visiting faculty in various medical colleges. Once again, it is our honor to have you here. Truly, we are thankful to you that you accepted our invitation to join our podcast, sir. So let's begin the conversation. Our first question is, can you share your research, recent research work on which project you are working and what is the whole story of the current status, sir?
Yeah, so our work basically revolves around patients with genetic diseases. So there are more than 7,000 different types of genetic diseases which affect children, adults at different age groups. And our main aim is to look at these genetic diseases. So at Center for DNA Fingerprinting and Diagnostics, we have two types of jobs that we do. One is diagnosis of these genetic diseases. So the known genetic diseases, we diagnose them in the patients, in the children who come to us in our clinic. We do the diagnosis. Many of them do not have therapy. So we do prenatal diagnosis in the next pregnancy. So we prevent birth of another child with the same disorder because most of these disorders do not have any treatment. So that is one part of the work where we provide services to patients with different genetic diseases. The second part of the work revolves around identification of novel genes for these genetic diseases. Now, if you look at our body is made up of cells, and these cells contain the DNA. So DNA is the code. Based on this code, all the proteins are formed through which our body is formed. Now, in our each of our cells, there are about 19,500 genes. Gene is a part of DNA which codes for a protein. So about 19,500 such parts are there. But we know diseases only for about 7,000 of these genes. So about 12,000 genes, we still do not know what disease they will cause. And that's why when we do diagnostic testing, almost 50% of our patients, they do not get a diagnosis. we don't know what is the disease in them, and that's why then we cannot do any prenatal diagnosis, therapy, counseling becomes difficult. So the research area of our work basically revolves around finding these novel genes so that we can develop some therapies, we can develop diagnostics, we can do prenatal diagnosis, and that's the whole process that we follow.
Okay, I know because I was in diagnostics and prenatal program, so it is a very challenging and difficult job. You are the, we can say, one of the scientists in the mission program. So can you tell more about the mission program on pediatric rare genetic condition?
Yeah, so as I told you that there are thousands of genes where we do not know what disease they will cause. So keeping this in mind, the Department of Biotechnology, which is under the Ministry of Science and Technology, they have funded a mission program in pediatric rare genetic disorders. This is a collaborative program of 16 different institutes across the country, and our institute, our lab is the nodal center. So we collaborate with all these 16 centers. They recruit patients with undiagnosed diseases where the diagnosis is not found after doing all the genetic tests. And such patients are then evaluated, their blood samples are sent to us, we do their exome sequencing, their genome sequencing, we sequence the whole genome, try to identify any novel genes that may be causing this disease. And once we identify any particular possible gene, then we have our basic scientist colleagues who help us to model that gene into cell lines, into zebrafish models, into mouse models, into fly models, so that we can study these genes in a better way and then report them as novel genes. So that's the overall idea behind this mission program. It's a very ambitious program, a 5-year program, almost funding of rupees 100 crores by Department of Biotechnology. And till now, we have sequenced more than 2,000 such families. We have already reported on 2 novel genes. About 8 to 9 novel genes are in pipeline where our scientist colleagues are helping us. So it's really a collaborative program between the clinical experts as well as the basic science experts. And I hope many such programs happen in future, because India, with such a large population, there are so many patients of rare diseases, and all of them need this knowledge to make their life better.
Yeah, sir. So my next question is actually regarding the novel gene discovery. So you are the second person that discovered a gene. So what exactly the story behind that discovery, or how it is recognized by international bodies as a novel gene?
Yeah, so see, for the last 30 or 40 years, the field of medical genetics has been growing in various developed countries. But in India, there was no such kind of research going on. So when we started our research, we had so many patients for whom the gene, the condition which is caused by any particular gene was not known. So such patients were there, and when the new technologies came, we took up these patients. So one of our first patients was a child with abnormalities in their hands and feet. So 2 children of a family were affected, and this was reported as a probable new disease by my teacher in 2003. So that time we had no such technologies available, and we had just clinically evaluated and kept it as such. But in 2011-12, when these technologies of exome genome sequencing became available, then we called this patient back and we took the patient's DNA and we evaluated. And through evaluation, we could identify that no known gene was mutated. However, there was a mutation in one of the genes called as the BHLHA9. This is a basic helix loop helix kind of protein. And so we were not sure whether now this is a novel gene or not, because it may be a false discovery also. So the next, when we looked at the mouse model, because the mouse deletion was already available, and we could see the exactly same picture as that was seen in the patients. So that was a really interesting thing. First time for us in 2012 that we published this as a novel gene. And that was really a encouraging thing for us, that we can also do this novel discovery of genes in India. Because earlier what used to happen is that we used to just send samples abroad and then they would discover the genes and then publish as novel genes. But these things were not happening in India, and we were very happy that we could establish this pipeline. And after that, almost we have described 5 to 6 novel genes until now for different diseases. And as I told, in the mission program, we have another 8 to 9 genes which are in process, because the novel
Okay.
gene identification is a long process. It takes a long time to identify the gene. Then you have to really correct the gene function. You have to check for that gene, what is that gene function doing. If that gene is deleted, what is the effect? And this we cannot do in humans, so we have to use different organisms or cell lines to do that. So it takes time, effort, and hence that's the process is very slow. So but we are happy that we are able to do this in our country, and after this many of our students are also involved in this kind of studies, and that's really encouraging to see.
After the introduction of next generation sequencing and like very high throughput and very speed machines, genetic science evolved gradually, I guess. And government and scientists like you are aggressively taking the front and utilizing the machine, the capabilities, and due to these kind of like combination, I guess these kind of discoveries are become possible right now.
Yes. So the government is also funding very generously. Like we have no limitation of funds, and hence it is all it boils down to who wants to do the work. So today's scientists, today's students, I think it's a really good scenario, because when we just entered into science, there was always a dearth of funds. Fund was a limiting factor. However, with India's progress and development, now there is no limitation of fund. It is just we need good students to come into this field, and whoever wants to work, there is enough fund, enough facilities available. We don't have to do anything. We don't need to send abroad or something. All these facilities are available in our country. So it's really a very nice time for people to enter into this area of research and genetic diagnostics and do some good work in this area.
Indeed, indeed, sir. It's true. I often tell this, like what we just discussed to the students. Okay, like the process is tedious to become a part of any organization, but there are many organizations in India are aggressively doing research in the field of genetics. So you can give it a try. So definitely, these efforts are very appreciable too. Now, my next question is about what exactly the scenario for the pediatric genetic disorders, particularly for India. Whether these conditions are like every year raising or decreasing, or what exactly the statistics are, sir.
So, if you look at the statistics, what is known is that almost throughout the world there are about 350 million or 35 crore patients of rare diseases. And by looking at the Indian population, we in India we have almost 7 crore patients. So, even though we call them rare diseases, if 7 crore patients are affected by this disease, it's not really rare. And
Yes,
so
yes.
that is why, and because now we have taken care of many of the infectious diseases and nutritional deficiencies through various programs. So now it has become a public health importance, that genetic diseases have become of public importance. And that is why the government also is putting in a lot of efforts towards this. So there are research programs in this area, as well as the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. They have come out with a national rare disease policy in 2021. So under this policy, a lot of funding, a lot of efforts are being done. They have established about 15 centers of excellence, one in each state, through which research as well as treatment of patients with some of these rare diseases is going on. So government is spending almost 50 lakh rupees per patient for treatment of these rare diseases,
Okay.
because about 5 to 6% of these rare diseases there is a treatment available, but it is very expensive. So now this treatment also is being given free of charge to these patients. Similarly, the ministry is also funding for doing research as well as development of drugs in India. That is very important, because many of these drugs are very expensive because they have to be imported. But now there are so many calls for proposals from Department of Biotechnology, from Indian Council of Medical Research. A lot of funding is being given to develop these drugs in India, so that the Indian pharma industry can work towards it, manufacture these drugs in India, and then they become cheaper and more available to the patients. So a lot of impetus is there from the government side, because rare diseases have become important from public health point of view, especially now. And we feel that the numbers are increasing, but I feel it's not really that the numbers are increasing. It's just that we are diagnosing more. Earlier, we were just
Okay.
leaving them as undiagnosed because there were no facilities available and
Yes,
funding
yes.
was the issue. But now, with availability of funds for doing diagnostics, Many of them we are able to do on free of charge basis. So we are diagnosing more of these patients, and that's why it looks as if there are more genetic disorder patients. But these patients have always been there, just that we were not diagnosing them.
And sir, you just discussed very good point about government's involvement in actively taking care about patient and involving in diagnostic. We have in Gujarat, we have a team of RBSK who is actively like looking for the babies that having genetic disorders or
Yes.
congenital disorders, and they try to help them.
Yes.
Government is actually taking care of all of these things, but it is like people made a bubble that government is not taking care and we have no facilities available, but that's not true. I personally experienced that. So whatever you told us, that is absolutely true. People have to go to regional hospitals to test or to look for diagnostic. All the facilities are already available, sir.
Yes.
And sir, I read about your experiment with coffee. You use
Okay.
coffee as a treatment. So what is the story and what was the outcome?
Yeah, so this is like a nice anecdote that I use to tell sometimes how simple things can be really life changing. Like for this instance, we had this one patient who was referred to us from Bangalore. So this patient was seen by one of my colleague who is a geneticist there. And this patient had this abnormal movements of the whole body. So he was about 25 years old. And throughout his life, he had these all involuntary movements. He could not control these movements. And because of these continuous movements, he was not able to do any cycling, swimming, he could not write. So it was very crippling for him. So when he came to us, we did the exome sequencing and we identified one disease-causing mutation in one gene called as ADCY. So ADCY is adenyl cyclase enzyme. So it's an enzyme which converts the adenylate into cyclic AMP. And this cyclic AMP is the one which produces all the neurotransmitters. So here this was a gain of function mutation. That means it was excess function. Because of the mutation, the protein was functioning excessively. So a lot of neurotransmitters were being produced and they were causing this abnormal movements. Now, when we identified this, we read in one of the articles that there was a similar patient in Madagascar. Madagascar is near Africa. And there, one of these patients, he went to his doctors and he told that whenever he drinks coffee, his movements will go off and then they come back later. So
Okay.
this the doctors there were very surprised. They thought this is some just like a coincidence that this person is telling. So they admitted this patient and then they gave him coffee and really the movements went off. And when they stopped the coffee, the movements came back again. And when they removed the caffeine by giving decaffeinated coffee, the movements again came. So it was obvious that the caffeine in the coffee was acting here. So how this was acting, when they looked at it, they saw that, so this ADCY, it is acting as a receptor for adenosine. So adenosine has to come and bind to this ADCY, and that is when this action happens. Now what caffeine and adenosine both have the same structure. So when you give coffee, the caffeine in the coffee goes and sits in the ADCY receptor. It does not allow the adenosine to come and bind. And so now adenosine is not binding, the neurotransmitters are not produced, and the movements are decreased. So that was the mechanism. So we thought, let us give our patient also coffee. So, but then the problem was the dose of coffee is needed. It's not like drinking our coffee. He had to take the full packet of the sunrise coffee to get that
Okay.
enough caffeine. So that was becoming really difficult. But when he started taking that, his movements also disappeared. He was so happy that almost 25 years he had these all abnormal movements of the hands and feet. And now they were totally gone. But we had to help him in some way. So then we ordered for these caffeine tablets are not available in India. So from abroad we
Okay.
ordered for them. So now he is taking the caffeine tablets so that he, otherwise taking a full packet of coffee every day is not easy to take. So
Yes.
he
Yeah, it
started
might have side
taking
effects as well.
yeah. So because it has all those other things, chicory and all is added to that coffee. So it's not
Mm.
feasible to give coffee packets every day. So we get this caffeine tablets, and with that he's doing well. So this was one of a nice example where a simple thing like coffee has stopped
Mm.
the movements totally just because of understanding the science behind it and how the things work. So yeah,
Interesting,
sometimes
interesting story.
life-changing things can happen by simple things.
Yes, sir.
He is
Yes.
nowadays happy. He is doing cycling. He is able to do his work. So it has totally changed his life.
Interesting story, sir. Yes. Last question I have is about the genomics core. What exactly genomics core is and how it will help students, or we can say new entrepreneurs, for their career.
So this we call it as the National Genomics Core. So this core was established by Department of Biotechnology in two centers at CDFD Hyderabad and at NIBMG in Kolkata. So at both these centers, the requirement here was that many of these new machines, they're very expensive, and every center cannot buy them, or they don't have the expertise to run these machines for doing exome genome sequencing. So that is why these two cores were established to provide services to private as well as government sector scientists or whoever wants these services to be done. So we have all different kinds of Illumina machines like the MySeq, the NextSeq, and even the latest NovaSeq X Plus instrument, as well as other machines like the Nanopore, Oxford Nanopore. All these instruments are needed for doing next generation sequencing. So these are provided as a facility. So whoever wants to do sequencing, we get their DNA on a very nominal charge. This sequencing is done. We also help the scientists to decide what sequencing to do afterwards for the analysis if any help is needed. We have a facility for students. We call it learn as you sequence. So if they come with their DNA and they want to learn how this sequencing happens, they can come here, and while their sequencing is happening, they can observe it, they can learn. So this was the initiative which has started almost 5 years back, and now also we are providing these services. Although these same services are available from private players also, but to help the scientist, especially in research, we provide end-to-end services for anyone who wants to do exome, genome, or even see DNA is DNA, whether it comes from bacteria, animal, plant. So we had different experience. Saffron genome sequencing we did, teakwood genome sequencing we did, some bacterial sequencing we did. So DNA is there in all organisms, and different scientists come to us from both private labs as well as from government labs to do this sequencing. So this is available at a very less cost and at much higher quality from the National Genomics Core. So anyone can make use of that. It's the all information is there on our website. They can go through it and get in touch with us.
Okay, sir. Uh, we are running out of time right now. There are a lot of things that I can ask because I guess it is very difficult to reach out to sir again. But thank you so much, sir, because you responded very immediately. That shows your enthusiasm to spread genetics and how you love genetic and genetic sciences. So we are wrapping this conversation here. Thank you so much, sir, for guiding us, providing us knowledge, and interacting with us. I hope you will do a lot of things in future for students, for research, for India. So thank you so much, sir, once again.
Thank you. Thank you.